Hey, everybody, we're back with another installment of our Rebound Getting Back into the Groove series. I'm joined tonight again by Tony Lyman from Petal High School and Eric Shriver from Gold Indoor Percussion. And we're just going to check in with both of these guys tonight, find out how things are going in their season, and chat a little bit about what's going on right now, what they're focusing on, and kind of what they're prioritizing. We're recording this one in the middle of February, so really kind of getting rolling with the competitive season right now. I know we've got a lot of ensembles that are starting to hit the floor and have their debuts and things like that. That's coming up very soon for Gold and for Petal. We want to check in with, kind of what they're doing in their programs right now. So, Tony, I figured we'd start off with you tonight, and I'm wondering if you would please just kind of give us an update. How are things going with your ensemble right now? Is there anything new or developing that you'd like to share or report with us?
I would say that we're first of all, thanks again for having us on. I would say that it's going very, very, very slow,
Okay.
and a lot of that is by choice, and some of that is not by choice. We celebrated this past 9 to 9 that we had Saturday, meaning that we rehearsed from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. It was the first time since we started back in January that we had the full group. No one was out with COVID or sick or quarantined. We had the entire group, and I was like, well, this is kind of a serendipitous hype that used to be the norm.
Yes.
It used to be, oh, of course we're all here. And if someone was out, it was for something really, not that a pandemic is not major, but you get where I'm going with that. So things are going really slow. Just making sure that we don't skip any steps, and one of the things that I'm noticing is that fatigue is setting in, like mental fatigue and physical fatigue, because there's just so many new performers and new to just sustaining that kind of engagement for 12 hours. And I found out that was a muscle that we built up over time, both staff, students, and parents. After doing this for so long, we had gained the stamina of being able to sustain that engagement. And a large part of it is that we knew why we were doing it. And we don't have that thing to draw. It's like, okay, well, I really need to shake this off. This is all for the big thing that we're working towards. And the big thing for them right now is only a folktale. So until we get at least our first show out there, we don't have those devices to draw from. So that's where we are.
Yeah, a lot of still keeping the faith and trusting you that there's a payoff coming in the future, but we're just not experiencing it yet.
Right.
Yeah, I imagine that's a huge thing that a lot of ensembles are struggling with and motivation. And if you're ever at rehearsal with your own group and you're starting to feel like, man, I'm not getting the response from the performers, maybe this is something that you want to let creep into your mindset and how you're running rehearsals, just thinking about they probably haven't had the payoff yet that makes it all worth it, makes the long hours worth it, the sacrifices that they're making. And that'll come once they are able to, get out on the floor and start to get that rush of adrenaline performing live in front of people again. Excellent points, Tony. Eric, how about with Gold? How are things going right now? What all has been happening in the last couple of weeks since we last got together?
It's been going pretty well, especially the last few weeks. This is definitely the time of season where the process is picking up faster and faster. What took us, 3 or 4 weeks to put together a minute or two of music, now is going like in a weekend, we're able to crank out another minute pretty easily. So we're just starting to get a better process. It's starting to come together a little bit quicker at this point. We're about 2.5 movements into the show. I think we have half of our last movement to finish. And we found a stopping point where we're going to be at for our first performance in 2 weeks. So this whole weekend was about just getting all the new material out there, getting it out of the way, for better or for worse. So that way we have some more cleaning time in next weekend. So it's been going well, and it was like kind of a pre-prepping for a regional.
Yeah. Well, I love what you mentioned about kind of gaining momentum at this point. You're picking up that inertia has been built. The ball is, rolling down the hill a bit now, and you've got the wind at your back. So that's great to hear, and hopefully something that a lot of other ensembles are starting to experience as well, where we're getting just a little bit more savvy with being able to make progress and to get things to be sticky about the show. We fix something and it kind of sort of stays fixed in a way that probably a couple weeks ago and certainly a month ago wasn't happening for a lot of our ensembles. So that's great to hear. Hopefully a lot of other groups are having those experiences as well. What I wanted to talk about tonight with both of you is kind of pick your minds and really get inside what your rehearsals look like right now. I'm wondering, and I'm curious about, here in the middle of February at this point in the season, what are the things that you're kind of focused on during rehearsal at this point in the season? And what kind of information are you giving back to your students? What are they receiving during rehearsal from you? Kind of what's the focus for all of that? Tony, we'll start off with you. Can you take us in your rehearsals a little bit and share with us what you're focused on and what kind of information you're providing to your students?
We're really focusing on our stamina and how much of you can we get to the end. You know, where's that fulcrum where you start to decline and what you're able to contribute to the group, you know, and how much can you push to the end of the rehearsal. I'm also talking to them about how much of this can you get done before you arrive at the rehearsal. Like, if you have the music, if you know the drill, how much of this stuff can you show up being prepared to do? You know, as I mentioned before, our section leaders now were freshmen the last time we did this in this way. So their leadership is, you know, not at the highest level we've had before, just because, you know, they were just getting their feet wet and had just gone through the arc of the whole thing before it was all shut down. So the staff is sort of having to be section leaders and doing that, you know, out of rehearsal motivation. Hey, we all need to be drumming together outside. We all need to do these things. Let's have rehearsal outside of the rehearsal. Come to the table. How much can you bring to the game when you get here?
Do you think, in terms of the things that you're working on in rehearsal right now, I'm assuming you're probably talking a lot about macro as you're trying to like get the show on the floor and rehearse things and finesse things. Probably haven't zoomed in on the micro yet, but definitely looking at macro concepts. Would you mind talking about your mindset for those things at this point in the season?
Right. And much to what Eric said earlier, once we get out of what we call learn mode, which is we're learning drill or we're learning music, our rate of progress just is a rocket after that point. And we as a staff always look to that point. And you know, like Eric said, like what would take us 2 days takes us 2 hours. And also we get further along in the input output ratio where they can start seeing things come to life. Like, oh, this part where there was silence, there's now this voiceover, or there's this cool sound effect, and then we get to do this. Oh, that kind of fills in some of the story that we've talked about. We also have our visual designer coming in this weekend, Steven Estudillo from Southern California, and that's also another time where, you know, things kind of take off, and I'm using that as a hype. It's like, hey, you know, we've got to have this done before Steven gets here, or he's going to let us know, you know, that whatever I can use to our advantage as motivation is where I am. In fact, the other day, our front ensemble had hit a mental break, and I could see it in their eyes. They were emotionally and mentally drained, and we just all took a field trip to the local dollar store, and I bought them all ice cream, and I read a children's book to them called Mungo Lost and Alone. It's a cautionary tale about a little monkey who makes fun of his friends and you know, doesn't have any friends at the end. You know, stuff like that to just break the monotony and get them I'm willing to do anything to get them to the next level of this thing.
Yeah, I love it. Sometimes you just have to kind of break out of that mold and go, look, we need a brain break. So we're going to get ice cream, or we're reading about Mungo. We're doing something to get you out of rehearsal mode and thinking about something,
Right.
cognitively engaged in another way, and then we'll jump back into it, and you're going to be so much more fresh.
And
and
we've
ready to
been
go.
programmed to be, no, we got to do more reps. We got to do more. And a lot of times more reps usually is the answer. But you just as an educator and a person who's a steward of students' well-being, you got to be able to read the room on that stuff.
Yeah. Well, and I think we've all experienced the point of diminishing returns where you do the rep and it got worse. And then we do another rep, it got worse again. Okay, pause. This isn't working. This is not going to be a great use of time. We got to do something else. And so I love that you're willing to share. Like, the bag of tricks sometimes is walk to the dollar store and get some ice cream. That's the best use of rehearsal time right now. And so, yeah. And what you said about, being stewards of the young people that we teach and trying to care for them. Sometimes you got to read the room and go, ice cream is what is needed right now. And then we'll get back to fixing up, letter G in just a little bit.
That rehearsal was awesome after that.
I love it. So everybody, this week, ice cream break for all of your ensembles. That's what we got to do. Eric, how about for you at this point in the season in your rehearsals? I'm interested because Tony, obviously with the Scholastic Ensemble, is having regular, like weekday rehearsals, I would imagine, weeknight rehearsals, things like that. And then maybe some camps on the weekend. For your independent thing, I'm assuming we're just rehearsing on the weekend. So you'll do some rehearsal and then say goodbye to everybody for 5 or 6 days and then get back together again. So talk to us a little bit in your rehearsals for your ensemble. What's your focus at this point in the season? What kind of information are you giving to the performers in your group?
Well, I mean, like you guys mentioned, it's very macro based right now. Like, I like to talk details, I like to talk specifics, but I just know this is not the time of the season for me to talk about that. For me, it's effort and awareness. Like, those are my two biggest things I focus on right now. It's effort. I'm not talking about achievement too much yet right now. I'm just talking about the effort. Are we all focusing on this? Are we all pushing our feet right here? Are we all listening into this right thing? Are we actually doing that? Or are we just saying we're doing it? So that's whenever something's not being achieved at this point of the season, it's not that the effort isn't there. It's the effort's maybe not in the right spot. Especially at the independent level, I feel like it's easier to get a high level effort because it's so hard to join an ensemble, like an independent ensemble. Just driving to the ensemble every weekend and the extra time and effort it does take to get to independent. I feel like it's easier to have every member invested. So it's different than scholastic level, which I deal with at scholastic level. I have to convince the members we want to do this, and these are the reasons why we want to do it. At the independent level, they showed up to auditions in September and October knowing that I'm going to put my effort in.
Yeah.
So when the members aren't achieving at this level of season, I know they're putting the effort in for sure. Like, I know they're invested in it. So it changes the discussion for me. It's about, where are we putting the effort in? What are we focusing on? And like I said, awareness. When you're in the rep, when you're in this moment of the show, what are you actually listening for? What are you actually watching? Where are you getting tempo? A lot of our big moments we're talking about right now are like, I call them red flag moments. Like, when the pressure's on early season, these are the moments that are probably going to go wrong and we're going to have the most issues. So I always try to hit the red flag moments right away. Let's talk about this and figure out a way out of it and make sure we have a solution for all those moments first.
I love that idea of, independent or scholastic, but defining for your students where are going to be the problem areas of the show where we might need to have a slightly different perspective, or all be unified in we're thinking about this so that the red flag moment doesn't become a problem for us. And I think you bring up such a great point of defining those things early rather than deep into the season, defining them early, coming up with solutions for this. For me, it was always ensemble timing stuff. That was like the big bugaboo at this point in the season where you're like, we all understand it, but man, every time we do the rep, like, this part gets super stretched out and it feels like it's about to fall apart. And so right now is the time to stop and go, okay, this performer's driving the bus right here. This section needs to listen to this. Everybody else, you need to listen to this. And it just start to coordinate those things, or, like little visual cues on the floor. At this point, you need to pick up so-and-so's feet. That's going to set up this next section for your introduction of this part. Those kinds of things are great to define at this point. Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. All right. The other thing that I was really curious about was what kind of work you're doing to prepare your ensemble at this point of the season, not just to perform the show well, but to execute the show day experience, as I like to think of it. So you've got your first shows coming up right now, and I'm curious, what is it that you do with your ensemble to kind of prepare your students for that show day experience and get them prepared to execute a great performance coming in and out of the gym, but also just like loading the truck or the trailer, getting to a show, warming up, like taking care of yourself, eating well throughout the day, loading the truck afterwards, all that kind of stuff. Like, is there anything that you do to prepare your group for it? And if you would you mind sharing that with us? So Tony, we'll start with you. In Petal High School, I imagine, it's been a couple years since you did the in-person indoor percussion show day experience. So as you're thinking about the first show coming up, what kinds of things will you do with your students to get them ready?
We usually do one of our 9 to 9s at a different school, or I just pick, go to a local elementary school. And that way we load the truck, we go there, and then we have to load the truck again and come back. And that gives us at least that experience of taking all of our stuff somewhere. And then we can kind of identify where the problems are. So now we're at a situation where none of these kids have really kind of loaded the truck yet. Or well, we did in the fall, but ironically, we have more stuff for indoor than we did for the fall. I don't know how that works out. It's a quarter the size of the kids, but more stuff. And then I just have a talk with them. As we start to get closer to the show, I start to talk to them about the last 25 years, of what we've done and what the students who have been before them have provided them this opportunity and how unique it is. And when we go to this place, all of those people have set it up to where you can go in there and people will take you seriously. There are people that are going to walk into this room for the first time and no one knows who they are. They're fighting for the benefit of the doubt. And people who have come before you have set it up to where they can come in there and expect things from you. A, you have to deliver on it to honor them. And B, you can't be known as the people that didn't do the thing that the other people did. So now I'm just, I have to use, if you want to call it legacy, I hate using that word because it seems a little sanctimonious. But just the efforts that have gone into this Herculean task of getting this group to the place where we can, have nice things, as I always say. We've got to honor that. So I do a lot of that, and there's just straight up reading in the riot act. You're representing an entire town of people. They're not going to say, hey, you, Joe, were acting unbecoming of whatever. They're going to think the entire town of Petal. And then when we go to Ohio, it's the state of Mississippi. And we don't really need any more of that help. So let's represent this in a way that, that we represent well. So that's kind of my process for doing it. And it gets a little bit more intense as we go along, but that's the basic tenets of it.
And so you'll usually do this, I'm imagining, as like a sit down with the ensemble. Like, everybody sit down, we've got something that we need to talk about. I'm also guessing, just listening to how you're describing this, that it's probably not just one session, but you break this up as like, we're going to talk about this, and then a couple of days from now, we're going to sit down again and we're going to talk about this aspect of behaving well at a show. Okay, now we're going to talk about being efficient with how we set up to warm up. Now we're going to talk about getting in and out of the gym smoothly and with no panic. And that, yes,
right.
Nodding your head. Yeah.
And I also say, when you're in the world class, that's not something that happens in a performance. World class starts when you wake up in the morning, how you are on the bus, what you eat, how you unload the truck. You can't, all of those are a natural arc to that performance and going home. World class isn't a button. It's a lifestyle.
I love that. Yeah. And I mean, like, we can take that same advice and go, well, just because we're not in world class doesn't mean that we can't act that way. So if you're teaching an A class group or an open class group, that can become the culture as part of your ensemble and your program as well.
Right.
And say, look, if it's good enough for Petal High School to do it this way, do it, the right way, let's apply that here. And let's make sure that that's kind of like our vibe and our style with our program as well. Whether you've got 20 years of experience in the activity or 2 years of experience, we can all apply this kind of the same standard and the same philosophy. Eric, how about with your ensemble for Gold specifically? I know you do this with high school groups and you also do it with Gold. Can you share a little bit, like, do you do the same kind of thing where you sit down and talk to the members? You were talking before about how independent participants have made the decision to opt into rehearsal, so they kind of know what they're getting themselves into. But I assume you don't just take it for granted that they're going to be good to go with all the show day stuff. What's kind of your process for that?
For a lot of it, for show day process it obviously starts weeks beforehand. It's just introducing ideas and concepts. That way it's not all like a ton of information the week before the first show. So for us, like obviously in Southern California, we have a different type of warm-up situation than other groups at competitions. But we talk about our warm-up process, and we just go on campus and we go through our warm-up routine, and we go through the lot chunks and things like that. So we talk about exactly what we're going to play. These are the exercises we're going to play. These are the tempos we're going to play. When we get to full ensemble, we talk about our logical like rehearsal chunks that we will be taking. Because that way when we're in the lot and there's chaos all around us, we just know, like, even the kids can't even hear me. They know, like, oh, we're going to do B to C next, because that makes sense. That's what we always do next. And that helps them feel more comfortable at the show, because it's very predictable. So they don't have to focus their energy and everything on what's happening. They can focus all their energy on what's about to happen because they already know. So a lot of it is about the process of rehearsal and how we approach the 3 or 4 weeks before that first show, as we set all these routines. Getting on and off the floor is a whole discussion. And it's the same thing where we have to do this way early, and then we start talking about it each week a little bit more. And then the week before the first show for us next week, a big part of our discussion is we're going to sit them down. We're going to talk about everything. And my assumption is always nobody knows anything. I know a lot of independent members have done this before, but I just have to assume nobody knows what anything is. We have to talk about the timing line. We have to talk about the process getting in and out. We talk about the goals. The first show, the goal is getting in the gym successfully, safely, efficiently, being comfortable and ready to go in a timely manner. Doing the show, don't even talk about the show. Getting out of the gym, everything's moving quick, and we get everything out in the right order, in the right manner. And then however many people came in the gym need to leave the gym at the end. That's a success for the first show. And that's really, really important. Obviously, we have our competitive goals and we have the achievement level that we want out of that first performance. But really, for that first weekend, I tell them, if we can get in and do the process efficiently, it's going to set us up for success the rest of the season. Because then we're not stressing at the shows all the time. And then we have a chance to be relaxed and professional before the performance.
I always, with my groups, I called it skating a clean program, where like the goal is to get in here and not have a whole bunch of unforced errors before the performance started or after the performance. Like, just if we can get in and out smoothly and correctly, and we don't look like a disaster, success, and then we'll hone the show and make it better. With my groups, one of the things that we always did, the last rehearsal before the first show was an on-off rehearsal. So we like took at least an hour and had them stage everything outside of the NPR, everything outside the gym. And we'd go around and we'd do all the assignments, like, you're pushing this speaker, you're plugging in this cable, you need to move this prop. The 4 of you are pulling out the floor. And we would like time it, ready, go. And we'd get in and we'd look at the stopwatch and be like, okay, we got set up in 7 minutes. We've got to be way more efficient than that. But, it also gives you a chance to figure out, like, where are the bottlenecks? What's the issue? Did I put too many people on pulling out the floor? Do I not need that many people? What was the problem? Getting the props into the gym, like they couldn't fit through the door. Okay, we got to re-engineer this portion. Or, these people plugged in their cables very quickly, but we had a problem with getting the last speaker into position and then getting that cable out. So we got to re-engineer how this is going to go. So like, we do it once, we'd find all the flaws, we'd reassign some jobs, reallocate resources, go back out, do it again, run it, shave a little bit of time off, and just like hone it a couple of times. And then you eventually get a system where you're like, okay, this is it. If everybody does exactly this, we're going to be able to skate a clean program. And then we're ready for that first show. And I love that both of you talked about, it goes beyond just in and out. It's also arriving at a show. How do we unload? What's the warm-up routine going to be like? But also just decorum. Like, you're walking around with our ensemble's logo on your warm-ups or something like that. Everybody knows who you are. And so if you're at a show acting a fool or not following the rules or like trying to sneak over to the spectator side instead of sitting on the performer side, like, that will be known. Everybody will see that, and it reflects really poorly on all of us. So I love that you both mentioned how important it is to talk through all of that stuff. Before we wrap up, I want to pick your brain on one other thing, and that's a part that I think sometimes some programs overlook a little bit. We talked about prepping the students, and I think most of us do that now. And if you haven't before, hopefully you can use the wisdom from Tony and Eric, because they had some great ideas. But I want to ask if the two of you do any preparation work with the parents from your program as well. Do you do anything to get your parents ready for that show day experience and for representing your program and all that kind of stuff? Because we have total control over the students that come to our rehearsals, not as much for the parents. So Tony, I figured I'd start off with you. Is there anything that you do to prepare your parent community for traveling to an event?
Yes, I do. And I know I'm a parent now, and my kid is actually in the ensemble now. Um, I want to make my parents are always afraid that they're going to do something wrong that will get us disqualified. And I totally don't tell them that that's not a thing. I just kind of ride that wave a little bit and just explain to them, it's like, hey, look, I take them through the same process that I take our kids through. It's like, we really want to make sure that we think about the entire group. I know you're here for your child, but when we're in this capacity, it's the entire group. We also host our event partners for WGI Regional, the Hattiesburg Regional. So we get practice doing that and being hosts, and the decorum that goes along with that as well. So just playing off of their sense of wanting to get it right. I just kind of ride that wave.
And do you get the parents together for a parent meeting or something like
Yes.
that, like an in-person time to talk this through?
Yes, we have a booster meeting, and I talk them through it. I do a WGI 101, and I talk about the different classes. I tell them that even though there are no other groups in our class at the local shows, we're still getting valuable feedback, and that people around the country see those numbers, and that it's not a waste of time to go do a local show just because we're not quote unquote competing with another group in our our classification. So there's that, and a large part of our parents participate in our day, whether they're handing out water and snacks, or they're helping us push props on, or they're sewing up costumes, or wiping tears or whatever. They're a part of our process. They have jobs when we get there.
And Eric, how about for you? I know with an independent group, it's probably a little different. Can you talk to us about anything you do in terms of the approach for parents or supporters or things like that?
For us at the tenant level, so currently we don't have any parents, and that's okay. I'm sure some will kind of trickle in as we get in the process, but it's more about prepping the members that the members and the staff, we're in charge of everything. Like, we just have to handle everything, and that's just the expectation. That's fine. Any extra help is great and appreciated. I also talk to the members at this point in the season that they have to be very self-sufficient, because as an independent group, we have many staff members, and it's not going to be the same staff members every single performance all the time. So you can't rely on so-and-so to grab the speaker every show. Every show, they're in charge of making sure they assign those roles. So I do it at the high school level as well. When parents come in, I tell the parents, hey, just show up to the lot for the warm-up. We'll tell you exactly what you need to grab and about where it needs to go on the floor, and the kids will help you with that. So basically, it's training the kids to help talk to the parents as well, or the staff members. That way, somebody in the front ensemble can say, hey, we need to move the speaker, and it just needs to go right there. I'll handle the rest. And that's what we need the grunt work, but we don't need the specific little details. And it makes it less intimidating for the parents too.
Mhm.
Well, Eric and Tony, this has been great stuff tonight. A lot of very valuable information that hopefully every group can take back to their programs and figure out where it could be applied and maybe make sense. And I want to thank you guys again. And then we'll catch up with you in a couple of weeks where we'll be able to hear about the first performance from both of your ensembles. So looking forward to that. Everybody, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again in a couple of weeks.